Okay, so it took a little longer than I had anticipated to get all the clips assembled because I'm having issues with the Xbox console companion as well as the actual Xbox itself on these clips, because every time I name and download and move them, or even if I don't do any of that, I just literally straight up delete them. They keep coming back every time I reopen it. So that's extremely frustrating and hopefully going to change in the near future. I'm assuming just a bug that they'll hopefully figure out and fix. But in the meantime, I figured that this would be a good companion video to the one I just made on the Toady build, which is not this one. And everything almost just crashed on me again. Wild. Not a good day for my computer Xbox. But anyway, this build takes a while to load. There we go. So I talked about the build background and its performance. It's like how I updated it. This is basically going to be a probably rather boring, but just a run through of the clips I recorded, screenshots I got while I was playing this build. And then probably down the line I'll take this video and the other video and merge them together. But in the meantime, I thought I would kind of go over what it ended up looking like, since I mentioned things like fuel and wires and resources and whatnot. So to start with, I mentioned, I guess even if I go back to the clips, it'll be a good example. I mentioned that I had just started using the toadfish this week, this past week, and we've been basically no-lifing them. So even as early as late July, I was still running the retchers before I had sold them, and we're working on, I flipped them, so I sold them and then had been planning on buying them back cheaper. Didn't end up working, but that's how it goes sometimes. And all these clips are still busted and probably not going to load, so it's going to be kind of hard to show, but basically started using the toadfish around the 6th, so about a week ago, considering how I finished yesterday. Would have been the 12th as the last day. But I don't know if any of the clips are explicitly dated for then with the toadfish. Whatever. In any case, I had mentioned, even as recently as, what was it? Yeah, 4 days ago, about the rate of gaining and losing, or rather just gaining in general, intel. So we basically been no-lifing it this week in our spare time. So at that point we had 75% of the weekly intel cap, so 3,000 out of 4,000. Then we are only 1/4 of the way through the scrap 4,500, 1 out of the 10th for the 2,800 for wires, and 1 out of 20 for battery limits. So that just kind of as an anchor point compared to where I am now for stuff. So not saying that it's going to be terribly viable for people to go out and try and get 32 patches for a legendary weapon in like 1 week, unless you basically play it like a full-time job. But in any case, if you do, or if you play better than us, then it's very possible that you'd be able to. This is definitely the shortest turnaround for a trial for me, especially for the legendary tier. I mean, the Canon and Retro one I'd been working on and off for a significantly longer duration, and I still don't have those done. In fact, the Retro one, I made a post about seal clubbing, or was it a couple of months ago at this point? Yeah, 3 months ago. So it was the Retro build, which was in the video earlier on, and still working on that. So in any case, yeah, the 1 week turnaround has been pretty crazy as far as what that actually looks like for resources. So as could probably be expected for how much we played in the week, the result of capping out the toadfish starting from the bottom, or rather nothing, to cap, it's 32 patches. Each patch is 40 kills / assists. So a not insignificant amount of playing. As a result, that got us to the intel cap very quickly, 4,000 out of 4,000. Then hit basically the scrap cap, So I left a little bit of buffer room so I can still do the daily patrol wins against bots and still get scrap from that. And then we start working on wires, so we're about halfway through that now. And very little progress on batteries because we just did it for the, 12 wins in a week or something like that? 10 or 12 wins. So that one we've done the least. And as a result, also have gotten a not insignificant amount of fuel. So I bought some to do plastic raids early in the week before we ended up doing a fuck ton of PvP. So I have 500 in my inventory, and then obviously not exactly related with this video as all the rest of these, but also have another 2 batches of 1,000 put up currently. So 2,500 fuel, plus I bought some, plus I used a lot more than I bought doing plastic frontier defense. So yeah, for perspective, have 636 plastic and you get about 20 per run. 30 per run? 30 per run. So a not insignificant amount of those runs as well. Mind you, I had some beforehand, probably about 200 or so. So it was only like 15-ish runs, which sounds about right. We got a couple of fails because we got matched with significantly lower tier people, and I'm not going to spend repair kits on that. In any case, as far as the media recorded in the time period, unfortunately, well, not really, kind of, whatever. As a result of how I organize them, which is just by date in the year, month, date format, these are organized effectively alphabetically for all of the ones that tie for dates. So these aren't going to be in any particular order, but I'll just be going through talking about them basically as I feel like makes sense in the order. So to start with, this is an example of like the absolute worst lobby we got for the enemy team, and I think is a very good example of why we also try and stay out of the 10,000 power score lobbies, is because we get this but in reverse. So these guys' highest power score is 6,500. The only ones higher than them are bots. So it literally decided, yes, we'll match a pair of sub 95s and a pair of above 8,000s, or admittedly these guys might not know each other, they might be separate, but in any case 8,000s and a pair of sub 9500s against a squad with a 5,500 and then 2 sub 6,500s and then another 6,500. I don't know if they knew the rest of them, but in any case it decided, yeah, at the very least a 5,500 with 2 6,500s should fight against 2 9,500s, which sucks. And then it didn't even fucking try to balance out the power score totals with the bot. So for instance, if we crack open good friend the calculator real quick, type in the power scores on the left hand side, sum this, and then average it. And then we do the same thing for the left side, or sorry, for the right side. Weird. Right. Yeah, you can see there's a pretty significant power score discrepancy between the two that the bots didn't even come close to correcting. So yeah, that's terrible, and we get the same thing as 10,000s. We get thrown into like the 13, 14, 15,000 lobbies pretty consistently, and even as a sub 95, we still get that a lot. So there's some rationale if you're looking for empirical evidence as to how cracked matchmaking can be sometimes, as to why we do that and why one might consider that a fair thing to do, a reasonable thing to do. We also have examples of fuel. So this was just a screenshot I took of the fuel gained before I just showed it with the console companion. Anyway, a list of matches showcasing why, as I talked about in the other video, fuel isn't a terrible idea to slap on your build. I will note that there's some overlap between these. I believe 3 minutes 2 seconds starts here. Yeah, for Sandy Golf. So the rest of these are just duplicates. The bottom 4 of the second one are duplicates of the top 4 of the left one, but just kind of showing that it's like a continued streak. And then at this point where we finished, I got my last kills, so I didn't need to continue going with the Toadfish build anymore. This is basically just showcase when I was saying that putting fuel on the build isn't a, guaranteed loss or anything crazy. Out of all of these ones, which again is only like 16 or whatever, is one win where I didn't get fuel. And every time I didn't get fuel was because it was a match loss where I wouldn't have got fuel anyway. So just, again, some objective, although very, of course, nuanced and specific, very short example overall, but me trying to objectively show that, yes, you can have fuel tanks equipped on your build, and yes, you can be effective with it, and no, it does not mean that you're immediately going to be an easier target to kill or more likely to die or whatever. While it's true, the amount of variance that actually occurs from that is negligible if you build effectively. It's trying to was what I was trying to get at. So likewise, the first clip here, which is actually showcasing that. So this was beforehand, as you can probably see right there. That's actually the Janabi cabin, not the Dead Man. So this was before the final rebuild, which makes sense because again, this was earlier in the test, or in my trial run, and this was on August 6th. So this is, first off, very loud, but me showing not only that you can be effective with sniping, but more importantly, in my opinion, for the sake of this clip, that even if you lose parts, so for instance, the flame dog attacking my rear there, nothing explosive got, blown up. It was simply what they managed to chew through with their health regularly. And then even afterwards, where I got some more fans from people up on the cliff shooting at me, that it's not, a death sentence to have explosives. And even while having them, you can lose some of them while still maintaining fuel, which is what the purpose of this clip was. So I basically went and I hid until the end of the match, even though I mean, they had me dead to rights multiple times over there, I would argue. And yet still, I managed to get the full fuel from it. Obviously, it doesn't work out if your team doesn't, put in work for you. But yeah, and here's an example of how the sub 10 does not work for the power scores. And again, if you look at the discrepancy, it's really heavily leaning on their side. Like again, they have a 15, a 14, and another 14. We have a 14, a 13, a 12, and 11, and then a 12 bot. They have a 13 bot. So I'm not going to add it up, but just more example of the power score balancing not being super great. The rest of these are just basically clips of gameplay that went really well. So I'm not necessarily going to be promising that they're well trimmed for size or anything. I'm also going to do my best not to just talk over them. I'm just going to play them so they're included in this stream without me having to try and splice a bunch of different clips together. But for the most case, of course, these are cherry picked out of the, I didn't do the math, but however many dozens of battles we did to cap out intel and almost scrap and then get halfway through with wires. These are, the 4 clips that I think best showcase what you can kind of do with it. Of course, they're not going to be, the average game or anything, but just the example of, again, how with fuel, with a proper build, with, positioning and not necessarily just being a CQC build face hugger build, you can still be effective, which is more or less what I was trying to show with it. So I can probably even speed this up a little bit, or not. Because this isn't YouTube and we can't have nice things. Well, anyway, I'll just be quiet and let you all watch the video unless I know that there's a dry part, in which case I'll skip ahead. So here's, for instance, a really good example of how having the plank format with these weapons, in addition to trying to use them at pretty long ranges in general. Like, this is very close range for the build. But even then, with a target that's even moving slightly, it's very hard to land shots precisely with them as a projectile weapon that reloads. So most of the time it's more killing than degunning. So with the audio also playing, I'm going to get rid of the game being connected in the background, so don't have that overlaid. This one is going to be showcasing more Cold Soup's abilities, where I happen to be pin cushioning everybody, but she was really the one who went and actually killed everybody. Not that I didn't do a decent job point-wise myself, especially since, as you can see, the match is a 5v6. We had a dude who played almost immediately. And again, this is the second iteration on the 10th. It's not showing the date of the clip anymore, but this is on the 10th where I replaced some of the wheels. So I have the Shiv wheels equipped in addition to the array because I didn't need, or rather I had too much mass on the build with the Jinonabi, and this is before I looked at using the Terror or the Mass Fused Deadman, which had a little bit more capacity for mass in order to equip the heavier, more tonnage helpful wheels. As a side note, which I didn't really go over in the original clip as well, this is before I have radar slapped on the build, so a lot of the times I wasn't able to actually proc the perk for Falcon. Not because I wasn't looking correctly at them, which was a problem with retchers that I mentioned in a prior video, although that is also another consideration, because again, these are projectile weapons. I'm using them at very far range generally. I wasn't always looking directly at the target and proccing it, but I also didn't have them in radar range for a lot of it, which again prevented me from being able to get the proc. For what it's worth, Falcon's bonus is a flat 15% damage against the enemy's build, period. Well, I say that there's damage reduction. I don't know how that math works out, but in any case, it's 15% for the entire build, even though the description seems to imply it's just 15% extra damage against the explosives on the build. So an example of one of the better matches in any case, where, you know, obviously I had the guard dog. They were able to rack up a lot of points, as was I, for, you know, the sake of just basically assisting. So this was probably the best match that we had as a group, as far as like me getting 6 assists. That's the most progress you can get per match in the trying to get patches for trials department. I will also note we fought Poison a lot, and we met like 5 or 6 of their clan members, and they did not seem to be real big fans of us, which I can't fault them for, because it tended to be very one-sided matches. For what it's worth, I did really enjoy the matchups against them, especially when it was just the 2 of them, Bent and Yamato, because it felt like a lot closer of matchups than a lot of the other ones we've had, where it's really like sweep one team or the other. We had a lot of very close matches like that explicitly against those guys. It was more of a sweep when they had 4 people online, but yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, it was just me being late on deciding to record the clip. Here's another one on my favorite. Whoop. Pretty sure. Yeah, that's the next one. On my favorite map, Sinto City, because of the bridge in the middle. I absolutely love just going up there, camping, and guarding the bridge. So this is a very long match, as you can tell from the clip being the 1.5 minute mark, on top of it already being, 2 minutes into the clip, or into the match. So this isn't going to be a great example of a lot of high action, but it is kind of showcasing in the first off how amazing the bridge is on Sinto City, and I really think they got to rework it, because at the back here there's basically a overpass that gets crumbled, so you can jump down it but you can't jump up, and as a result it's basically just this one ramp for getting up there unless you have a Skinner and do some shenanigans. So especially for this being within the cap zone, you're basically untouchable as soon as you go up the bridge unless people kill you. I feel like best case would probably be having this rubble collapse so it's in the middle bridges, So that way people could still loop up around and get behind you, but you'd have really long lines of sight shooting at them as they do that. But as it stands currently, kind of insane. For what it's worth too, this was after the rebuild, so this was quote-unquote today. It was yesterday. It's 2 a.m. now. But this was the last day that I was working on the trial, so this is the completely updated build. So running the Dead Man, having the Dead Man pushed up tight against the oppressor engine, or vice versa, because I actually pulled the latch backwards. Running the HEC wheels, and then having the flywheel and iris on the back, not having a fuel barrel while maintaining the fuel tank. And then likewise the next clip will also be that, because it's after this clip. Or rather, I suppose it's the same day of this clip. It's the last day, and it's the day where the build was on its final iteration of updates.
Now that's what I like. Well done.
So this one I'm particularly proud of, because as you can see, it's a 3v4 situation, and we have a bot, and then we're also fighting people seal clubbing, having an avalanche, and then 2 ports in the sub 10,000 range, as it's usually. So it isn't necessarily the best example of my ability with the build, or the possibility of the build, or Toadfish in general. But a lot of things went really good for me, and I got really lucky with a lot of stuff, and obviously the team helped up to this point. So probably my favorite clip, and the best as far as if I basically messed up any more than I did, which is already a fair amount, like right here, then it probably would have been a fail. So being able to turn it into a win and end up with, some spoilers, 5 kills was pretty fucking snazzy. Yeah, so very much a really good match for me. Yeah, I think that'll kind of conclude that. I don't think I have any other clips that are pertinent, which would have been 22:08, 06 or onwards. Do have another one that I need to talk about in another video, but in any case, yeah, that kind of just shows Toady how it performed. Hopefully, if anyone needed it, sort of, hopefully in my eyes, showcasing how fuel can be useful, and you can be really effective with builds with it, with smart placement nonetheless. If you are sort of interested with how I ended up doing that on the build, especially like the version that you saw in the last 2 clips, that was covered in the prior video. So yeah, I don't normally do post-mortems on my builds, nor post about them anymore. Sans like just videos of me building or updating certain ones have been the theme recently, or just talking about analysis of like speed cabin changes or structural part calculator or whatnot. So while I don't necessarily suspect or promise that this will be the norm, I do feel like this was a exception worth pursuing and showing, just because like I mean, the sad slash cool part of it is that we basically no-lifed Crossout for a week in order for me to get a trial done in 1 week. But I managed to get a legendary trial done in 1 week, which to me is kind of a big deal. So hopefully this can inspire and encourage rather than make you feel pity for poor Bronze who doesn't do anything other than play Crossout.